You made it. Welcome back, yeah, BEA, beautiful souls. Today's video, I'm going to be talking about Peacekeeper. I'm not going to go over too much about Highlander since I think overall the character looks like in a pretty decent spot, but I do want to have a discussion, Peacekeeper being in the testing grounds, and I wanted to see what you guys' thoughts were on the matter after I gave you guys my opinions. In my last video, I went over a little bit of what I thought about it, but I was basically just trying to glance over all the information so you guys get the gist of it. But in this video, I'll be talking about what I think needs to be changed, what's wrong with it, etc., and some of the good things that, of course, do come with the testing grounds. And keep in mind, this will obviously just be the first iteration of it. There's going to be a second one, I promise you. There's a lot to go over, and please let me know your thoughts on what you guys would like to see for Peacekeeper and Magi in the testing grounds. And before we get started, I really don't think the devs actually looked at any Peacekeeper, rework idea from any YouTube channel or looked at any Reddit post and asked the community what should be changed for Peacekeeper. They didn't touch about dodge cancel recoveries, and not just dodge cancel recoveries for every single move, but just the dodge cancel recoveries after the bleed, whether you miss or actually land the hit. Now, the list for the rework ideas for Peacekeeper really isn't long compared to most. I feel like majority of players who actually saw this rework and thought that they might come back to For Honor because of, their girl was getting reworked. But as soon as they saw this, they were like, okay, and? I mean, it's just, so for those poor souls out there, I know how you feel, but remember, this is just the first iteration of the testing grounds. Don't lose all hope yet. Alright, so first off, let's go over some of the good changes about Peacekeeper. Now, I don't play this character as much as I want to because she's really hard to play in Dominion. I'd say you have to be pretty methodical with your plays and have a pretty good team set up or good players on your team to help you not lose your mind, basically. So starting off with some of the biggest and glaring changes that I'm sure you guys have seen in my last video, where PK essentially is getting a neutral bash. Now this bash is not 500 MS, nor is it feightable. It's about 700, I believe, or almost 800, 766, something like that. It doesn't really matter. The point is that this neutral bash confirms a bleed attack, which can initiate, of course, her offense, and she does get enhanced lights after someone is bleeding and go into her unblockable mix-up. That's just a really fun feature that Peacekeeper has, and most characters don't have this unique quality. However, I have a lot of issues with this this change, because if you guys don't know, that JC did specifically state that they put characters in testing grounds and they add overpowered changes to see if it's actually overpowered or not. And I think the majority of players know that a slow bash like this, which is really slow and telegraphed with pretty good animations too, keep in mind, does not act as a solid opener and force your opponents to make a read so that you can get into your offense again. Because the main problem with Peacekeeper is that she doesn't really have a really good way to open people up. Yes, in duels, she is quite formidable with that really fast 400 MS soft feint top light, but that's really all she has after that, besides the fact of her chain 400 MS light attacks, which she only has one. Her chain pressure can be really powerful, but this mainly pertains to the duel scenario, and Ubisoft tends to make a character really powerful in 4v4. Let me just give you examples on how this will make Peacekeeper different in 4v4. So if you keep that 700 MS bash, you are going to try to use that bash to confirm for a heavy attack or finisher heavy from your teammate. But the thing is, you can just quite frankly guard break or just do a light attack to confirm that heavy attack. It makes zero sense on why it's not 500 MS just to confirm it. Not only will you kill two birds with one stone by giving her a 500 MS bash that guarantees a light attack that doesn't bleed, it will also make it so that she actually has neutral pressure outside of 1v1. That is the biggest thing. When they say it's only used for 4v4, there is literally zero reason to add it, because she could already gank without that bash. Because I think characters should be strong in 1v1s, especially if they're in testing grounds. If we want to make a character viable in 1v1s, there's plenty and a plethora of situations where dueling is very important. Whether you're solo queuing in pubs, matchmaking, or even playing Dominion series with the scrims, the 4v4 game modes that are very competitive, that will have plenty of 1v1s. Granted, in those scrims, there won't be as much 1v1s that will finish to the end because it's usually all team fights, but it's still going to make or break a character when it comes to dealing as much damage as possible. So that's why I really think that this bash specifically is not that helpful, especially if it's not feightable or if it's not just 500 MS to confirm a light attack or even confirm damage from your teammates. It is 99% useless in my honest opinion, especially since it doesn't do a pin like Magi grab or any of the other grabs in the entire game that pins. Now, if they went with the Afira route where they made the bash feightable, this would make her incredibly powerful in 1v1s and give her some really strong viability when it comes to team fights. Once they make this bash just like Afira's, it is going to be a really strong character, I promise you. They did say that they were going to improve the hitboxes of her heavy attacks too, and as you know, characters that have really small weapons like Peacekeeper and Afira's is fairly small, probably around the same size as Peacekeeper, but she gets quite a huge hitbox compared to Peacekeeper. So Peacekeeper will probably get around the same type of hitboxes that can cleave opponents around her in a 360-degree manner, and I think that is going to be a good change for her when it comes to team fighting capabilities. And a quality of life change for her specifically is that when she's actually out of lock, 2 heavies should be a side heavy and then another side heavy. Currently it's a side heavy and then a top heavy, and that's just not really good for horde clearing. A lot of characters who can out of lock and just heavy attack, usually they'll do the side heavies to clear minion lanes, and that's what they're really used for. And as I'm looking at this neutral bash, this has no agency in providing external pressure whatsoever, which can be okay with a character like Peacekeeper, but Ubisoft tends to make new characters have every single role in the entire game. Afira is a team fighter, anti-ganker, and ganker. She can do basically everything. Magi is basically the same thing. SolidSol, the same thing. And these characters all have either really good neutral pressure, good teamfight capabilities, and lots of clutch potential. Now when we compare this to Nobushi, her agency in duels is not that powerful. Yes, her chain mix-ups can be pretty detrimental to you when you're bleeding and when you're not really focusing on the kick animation, but other than that, her dueling potential is not very good. Her stalling is decent since she does have really good iframes on her dodge attack, and the target swappingness of her moveset, which helps her stall a bit longer, is pretty good, but she excels most in team fights. If they give Nobushi a neutral kick, however, that is going to make her incredibly powerful, and I think 1v1 she should have a pretty good dueling potential, but you will have to play her methodically, and that's why I feel like it's okay to not necessarily give Peacekeeper a bash, but just give her more unique properties so that her bleed can actually do something. What I suggested, if the enemy is not going to parry your soft feint top light, it should do the chip damage bleed amount, so it will tick 1 damage for 3 seconds or 3 damage, and you will be able to initiate your offense, and this makes so that you have enhanced lights and get access to neutral heavy unblockables. Otherwise, you remove the ability of her having to bleed someone so that she can access her finisher chain heavy unblockables. Just give her chain heavy unblockables if you truly want to just get away from that entire personality with the character. She's practically one of the characters that does have that unique trait, and I think we should keep it and try to make it work, instead of going the lazy route and just giving all the characters unblockable heavies. And that's a really important aspect about her bleed, which they didn't really touch up on at all. What they focused primarily was hitboxes on her heavies and then the neutral bash, and that's practically it. Now I know I've seen a lot of people say that they don't want a neutral bash for Peacekeeper, as she's one of the characters that don't really have any neutral pressure besides doing a heavy soft feint into light, which is a solid form of neutral pressure in 1v1s. However, in 4v4, which they have their tournaments based off around and how they balance, it is a non-existent type of moveset, and that's why they tried to counteract that by giving her a really slow bash. It doesn't make sense. Speed that up to 500 ms, okay, and let her get that guaranteed bleed off so that she can initiate, because basically a lot of people have compared her and Nobushi getting off some really cool bleed damage, but the thing is, Warmonger already excels at that role because her bash, which is already pretty fast and it's chargeable with hyper armor, can just set that up for Shaman and Nobushi so they can get more damage and set up some pins with the bite. That role has already been filled, and plus Warmonger is actually just top tier when it comes to pub stomping and in team fights, because she's got hyper armor and an undodgeable forward heavy that can catch dodge rollers. But that doesn't mean Peacekeeper doesn't really have a role, because she does have a really cool peeling role, because she can basically help her teammates out in team fights and have really good recoveries in all of her movesets. Granted, this is not going to be that helpful because of so much unblockables with Jane June, Janhu, and all those characters being flown at your side, but if it's just like a neutral heavy or normal normal heavy attack or zone, your recoveries will be fast enough to block that move. So Peacekeeper with that forward heavy attack and the dodge attack is really good for peeling for your teammates and just, repositioning yourself. She has a pretty good dodge range too, so that will help her stall ever so slightly. However, I don't think your anti-ganking is going to be that top tier and you're going to suffer in that regard. So you're going to have to want to stall and hope your teammates come and help you. So that's why I feel like in solo queue, it's very hard to play Peacekeeper, while in team coordinated settings, it's a lot easier. So Peacekeeper is not that bad of a character when it comes to Dominion. You just need a really good team to set you up, and with a few changes to her kit, she can really excel and play a certain role to support your team, just like how Nobushi does. The last thing I want to talk about Peacekeeper is her dodge cancel recoveries. Why haven't they done this and given it to her in testing grounds? Like I said before, JC said that they put in these characters and certain move sets to make them overpowered, to see if they're actually overpowered, and I don't think they actually realize that giving Peacekeeper the dodge cancel recoveries as an assassin, which pretty much every character has, and Zerker has become an absolutely, noob stomper, matchmaking stomper, and just competitive pick when it comes to the character having dodge cancel recoveries with hyper armor. It's just ridiculous, because if Peacekeeper had this, it wouldn't be that overtuned because she doesn't have access to hyper armor. So it mind boggles me that she gets a really half-assed version of the recoveries. I think her recoveries are fairly slow after she dodges. Characters like Orochi and Berserker, they have very fast dodge cancel recoveries after every single move. If they want a character to feel the same and play as every other character out there, then you might as well just give her the dodge cancel recoveries, since that is what you're trying to do with every single character. This is called power creep. Without these certain aspects or traits, characteristics such as dodge cancel recoveries or hyper armor, the character is just not going to be strong and in the meta, or not even close to the meta. Peacekeeper right now just absolutely gets demolished by hyper armor and unblockables. So the more new characters that you make and give them all the qualities, or basically almost all the qualities that make them incredibly strong, you better give that to the old cast so they can actually keep up with those characters. Otherwise, nerf the characters and bring them back in line with everybody else. There's always going to be a meta pick or a character that is really powerful, but we don't want to make everybody S tier or everybody incredibly insane. Let's keep the skill floor like medium tier and then make the skill curve very high. And the last thing is that basically her heavy attacks and her dodge attacks need to be increased in base damage instead of having it so much on bleed. So have it do her heavy attacks, just do maybe 20 damage and 4 bleed or 3 bleed or 2 bleed, and then have her dodge attack actually deal like 10 damage or something like that, or just like 11 damage, then a little bit of bleed afterwards. Just make it so that the base damage is higher than the bleed damage, because the tick rate is so slow, and the ability to get into an unblockable heavy finisher just requires so much effort already that I don't think the damage should be so minuscule compared to the rest of the cast. And I've said before again that after a heavy attack into a bleed, she should be able to go into unblockable heavy finisher just so that she doesn't have to initiate with a light attack or go for raw heavy to land another bleed and go into an unblockable finisher. So I think that would be a really nice quality of life change for her. I think a lot of people have been asking for that for a very long time. And that's practically my thoughts on the matter at hand. I think Ubisoft is doing a lousy job when it comes to these specific reworks, especially for Peacekeeper. The Magi one is perfectly okay, but seriously, who asked? Who actually asked? I mean, obviously I asked, but this is a character that did not really need that much touching up. If you're gonna nerf him with removing all the hyper armor, just leave it at that. But come on, can we add other characters that need more assistance? I'm surprised Nusha didn't get any adjustments whatsoever, because I mean, her rework and Lawbringer's rework have just been so half-assed that I feel so bad for the people playing them, myself included. But those are my thoughts. Like I said, please let me know your thoughts down below. Those Peacekeeper mains, what do you guys think of my thoughts and the rework in general? What would you guys like to see? And should we be letting them know on Twitter and Reddit how bad these changes are? Because man, it just blows my mind sometimes, I'll tell you what. So thank you so much for watching and spending your time here. I really do appreciate each and every single one of you guys. For Honor always gives us a headache, I'll tell you what, but I still have a grand old time being here with you all and spending my, precious years of my life with this community. So thank you so much. Hope you have yourself a great day. Bye-bye. See you later.